Hello and welcome to E2E's Business Unusual, a video content series forum by the SME community. I'm your host, Fergus Mellon, and today we're joined by Hardeep Rai, founder and chief executive of Kaleidoscope Investments. Hardeep, thanks so much for joining, and please, to get things underway, can you give us a brief overview of you and your business?
Well, thanks, Fergus, for the opportunity. So we set up Kaleidoscope back in 2014, actually, late 2014. And the aim of Kaleidoscope was to help people with disabilities to start their own businesses. And this was something that was very special and pertinent to me because I have a severely disabled child. So fast forward 3 to 4 years, we'd set up Kaleidoscope Investments. We'd met over 500 to 600 disabled people. We understood why they wanted to set up their own businesses and what their challenges were, of which there were many, and one of the biggest challenges was sort of unfair judgment. And this is what I think the big problem in the industry is with disability, is this unfair judgment. So Kaleidoscope came into being to sort of help to try and readdress that imbalance and to give people with disabilities the opportunities that they wouldn't ordinarily have to start their own businesses. That's how it initially started. And sort of back in 2018, around that time, we started getting demand for recruitment, Fergus. A lot of these individuals with disabilities, they didn't just want to start businesses, but they actually wanted to find jobs. And I then started to learn about how challenging it was for disabled people to find employment. But one of the things I wanted to do is I wanted to do things in a very different way, because Kaleidoscope is, it's all about person-centric capability for those disabled people and identifying what their hidden talents are and their skills are, and then directing them in the right way. So it's a very purpose-driven business. It is a private enterprise, but with a social impact mindset. And the lockdown has been an unbelievable period, Fergus, for everybody. We've all very sadly lost people that we've loved or known very close friends that have unfortunately been taken to this awful virus. But ironically, for Kaleidoscope, we have been more busy than we have ever been before. We've been approached by so many more people with disabilities that are having ideas about different things that they can do during lockdown. We have noticed that there's a real shift in the demand from candidates with disabilities to look for jobs, because they suddenly realize now that there's no physical impediment to them going into the workplace. And everyone and their dog is doing business through Zoom, right? So actually, they can do the same thing. And that's a massive benefit to them. And from an employer perspective, what we've also seen, which is really interesting, Fergus, is people beginning to think differently and alternatively. So, actually, we've already done things this way conventionally, but now we may not even have an office anymore, right? Let alone running business as standard. What do we need to do differently, and how do we need to think differently?
Interesting. And you said, the experience here, has changed how we all perceive work, whether we're able-bodied or have a disability. Are there things that the able-bodied community can take away from this, or even frankly learn from members of the disabled community and apply kind of going forward?
That's a great question, Fergus. So if I were to start answering that by a lesson for me, which was I have a blind individual, visually impaired, completely blind, that actually works for us. And I was talking to him about how some people were feeling about lockdown. And I think this was just 2 to 3 weeks after Boris had initially announced the lockdown period. And a lot of people were complaining about how difficult it was to not go out of their homes, not see their friends, not see their family members in some cases, like myself. And so I phoned Tony and I said to him, Tony, these people are really complaining about these sorts of issues. And he's like, well, Hardy, welcome to my world. Okay. It was literally welcome to my world. This is what I have to live with every day and have lived with for the last God knows how many years. And that was how it first started. And then I spoke to another lovely lady who had actually been indoors, believe it or not, for 11 years, Fergus, because she's got a skin condition and she can't go out into the daylight. She's got a very normal, in inverted commas, life as far as she's concerned, right? She's got children, she's married, she's got a family, she's got a job, but she's just adjusted and adapted the way that she's done things. And this really taught us, and we thought, wow, you know what, there's a lot of people here with disabilities that actually have phenomenal coping mechanisms in terms of what they've had to endure during their different journeys and how they've had to become more resilient. And what can we learn from that? What can we learn from that? So as part of our charitable organization, we set up something called the Sharing Circle, which is just very simple. It's just getting a few people together that wish to share their stories and ideas with other people with disabilities. And, we've had 5 sessions so far. They've gone brilliantly well, Fergus. And what's happening is every person with a different type of disability is talking about their journey, and is talking about their coping mechanisms, and is talking about how they had to accept their new life because of their disability, the changes they had to make. And we end up thinking that we're going to sort of help them as a foundation, whereas they end up helping us. They inspire us.
So I think kind of we as individuals obviously can learn, like you said, from anyone and everyone. Are there actions or I don't know what else to say, but actions that these business leaders should take and could take to engage with people with disabilities and with the goal of bringing them on as employees?
Sure, Fergus. The first thing we have to do is we literally have to change the glasses that we see disabled people through. Okay, so it's not about unconscious bias anymore. It's not about their disability. It's not about a negative perception about what they're unable to do. It's about actually understanding that they have a value that they can bring to the table. And it's a question of unlocking what that value is and making sure that it plays to the advantage of your business. Because at the end of the day, what we are trying to change is this concept of a compassionate hire. Okay, a lot of people hire disabled people because they have to tick a box, or because they feel sorry for that individual, or because they want to do something good for the community, or because it makes them feel better, right? I don't want people to think like that anymore, Fergus. But from a business world point of view, you need to look at a disabled person in terms of what value they can bring to your organization, right? There are phenomenal opportunities that disabled people can bring to the workplace. I mean, the biggest one actually is companies selling their products to the disabled community. Because here are 2 very interesting statistics. The spending power of the disability community worldwide is $8 trillion. Okay, $8 trillion. So that is the amount of money that these individuals and their families have to be able to spend on products and services, right? When it comes to then the UK, there's something called the Purple Pound, which is approximately £250 billion per year that disabled people and their families have to spend. That's a spending power. Why aren't companies tapping into that? How many companies do you know that have a proper strategy for selling their products and services to the disabled community? How many banks have application forms that are actually, that people with no vision can apply for? And these are all facts, by the way. Okay, these are things, I'm not making them up. These are things that have been told to me. So I think companies need to think about selling to the disabled community, and companies need to think about employing many more disabled people because they are talented, because they can help your bottom line, because they can bring money in, because it can be commercial, and all you have to do is listen to them. You just have to listen, Fergus. And this is what, over the last 5 years, we've met over 1,000 disabled people. And what I see versus the skill set that I think they have versus what their hidden talents are normally chalk and cheese, okay? And this is one of the major reasons we set up Kaleidoscope Recruitment, is because we have understood these people and what they are able to bring to the table. And then we can be very, very tailored when we're talking to a client about what it is they need and what it is this person can bring to the table. But my kind of ask for all the business leaders out there that are listening to us today is to give people a chance. Make sure your interview process is fair. Make sure that people with disabilities can apply for a job because your application form is accessible. The basic things over here, Fergus, need to be in place to give individuals an opportunity.
Great. And you have, I just picked up a recruitment business. Again, just for anyone watching this and thinking about how should they engage kind of with that, with you and your team there.
Yeah, we would be delighted, Fergus. So they could either look me up on LinkedIn, they could go to our website, kaleidoscope.group, and there's different people, obviously, on that website that will help them to be able to reach out to the right individuals. But we'd be delighted to speak to anyone, whether they're a candidate or a client, about how they can recruit more effectively into their business.
That's great. And just moving on a little bit, changing it a little bit, right at the beginning, it sounded like during lockdown you'd been exceptionally busy. One of the pieces that a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly earlier stage businesses, are thinking about now is how to fundraise, with the assumption that that era of cheap money, or maybe the era of cheap money is still there, but being invested in smaller businesses is, I imagine, very difficult. Are there, and again, just maybe one or two kind of tips or ways that businesses should approach a fundraise at the moment?
I think fundraising is very difficult at the best of times. I think it's really, really challenging. But I think having that real belief and story in your idea is critical. And one of the things that I would be advising people now, and a lot of people approach us with this, is have a really strong purpose behind your business. Don't come to sort of investors just about the money. I think people are now beginning to look much more deeply. So have a social purpose, have a cause, have a reason behind what you're doing. Okay, or link to one of these ESG sort of initiatives that are going on at the moment. So I think that's a very important thing. And the other thing I think is pick your investors very carefully. Don't have a sort of an attitude where it's an approach that I'm just going to, ping my pitch deck to the top 100 VCs. Don't think like that. Be very, very tailored. And this is something that we've had to do with disability, Fergus, right? I've had to find, and I continue to try and find, people with disabilities that really understand our world and yet want to add value to it through investment. So you've got to find people that are aligned to your cause when you're looking, and be very authentic and be very real in your approach. I think that's really important. I think video nowadays is incredibly powerful, Fergus, right? And there's nothing more powerful than doing a 30-second or a 1-minute video to sort of, get your message across. And I don't mean a sort of crowd cube video. I mean a really personal, I'm talking to you kind of video. This is the reason I have picked your organization. Please, I would love to speak to somebody. And it's kind of that, persistence of being, I remember when I got my jobs at James Caan, it was like that kind of the knife edge of not being desperate, but being enthusiastic. You have to get that right. So those are the top 3 things that I would say about fundraising. And I would say absolutely don't give up. There are many people out there that are looking to invest. You just need to know how to find them. And I think LinkedIn is phenomenal to find these sorts of things nowadays. A lot of people are very prolific on LinkedIn. But I think it's really having your story and your purpose set out in a way that people can understand it very quickly. They can read it a few sentences and they understand what the business is all about. You've got to be succinct as well. Sorry, that's more than 1 or 2 points, but hopefully that helps.
I love it. And it's been really interesting doing this series of Business Unusual, because walked in with the assumption that we wouldn't be talking so much about social enterprise and cause-driven businesses. But it's actually been fascinating hearing either from other investors or companies. We did one with one called Mama Codes, and they're about education and diversity in tech. So no, it's really interesting to hear that cause and mission being central. So,
and I think I'm so glad you said that, Fergus, because I think that I'm going to use one industry example, if I may, of a company called Acomable that was founded by Martin Sibley and Srin Medapalli, and there were 2 individuals in wheelchairs that set up Acomable because they found that Airbnb didn't really accommodate for people with disabilities, right? So Acomable was meant to be an organization that would help people with disabilities find holiday homes that were accessible. And a few years later, they got bought by Airbnb, right? So, and they did really well. So investors need to think that actually, yes, we're doing something for a purposeful cause as a social impact, but there's money to be made as well, because investors want to give returns to their investors, right? So, you have to think like that. It's a different world now.
Oh, no, fascinating. Yeah, and for me, it's like I said, very, very interesting. And just the final question for today is, I think when we first spoke, probably about 4 or 5 weeks ago, you'd said that kind of like this period is a great time for reinvention, for taking that step back and thinking about whether it's us or our businesses. And yeah, final question from me is, how have you used this period to reinvent yourself?
I have, it's a very good question. On a personal level, I've done a lot of thinking about where I'm going, where I'm heading, what my purpose in life is. Because I think that it's not just having the purpose for a business; it's having a purpose for your life and where you want to go. And I think my personal purpose is I want to be a force of positive influence and change in the lives of the people that I meet, Fergus. That's something that I want to enlist because I feel that in my life and in my career, I probably stayed in jobs a little bit too long, and I should have moved earlier. And that's okay. I don't regret anything. But I think when you look back, you realize that now. So I think I need to make sure that from a personal point of view, my purpose is aligned with where I'm going. And from a professional point of view, I've also had to think about Kaleidoscope again. And I always do. It's always really good to think, because a lot of people say to me, go back to the city, earn your six-figure salary and whatever. But actually, that's not what life is about for me now. I've had to think about Kaleidoscope and really where it's going. And one of my things that I've learned during this period is to be more delegatory in my mindset, to trust people more. If I've got a good team of people around me, then I need to make sure that I'm giving them the authority to do what they need to do. But I think people need to really reevaluate, what their lives are about, their personal environment and their professional environment. And, however long you've got left to live, whatever that is for every single one of us, just maximize it. Just think that you've got this amount of time left. I want to do something that I really enjoy. And don't be afraid to do that, because that's what Kaleidoscope is all about. It is about people with disabilities and actually otherwise, just realizing your dreams and making sure that you do everything you can to achieve them.
Great. And Hardeep, I'll just say for me, but also on behalf of everyone else watching and everyone at E2E, thank you so much for giving your time today.
Thank you for having me, Fergus and Shalini. Really appreciate the opportunity.